Thank you, Chairman Durbin, Ranking Member Grassley, for holding this important hearing. The Ranking Member and I have been co-chairs of the Trademark Caucus for a long time and have held a number of caucus meetings and hearings over the last decade about the risk that counterfeit goods provide or pose to American consumers. This testimony today is riveting and challenging. It reminds us that as the marketplace for the purchase of goods online has grown, and particularly strongly during the pandemic, that the number of stolen and counterfeit goods that are now being stolen and fenced or produced and sold to American consumers has taken off dramatically. We've heard about unsafe goods, whether they're cell phone batteries or bike helmets or spoiled baby formula or counterfeit drugs that have harmed Americans. They also ruin the trust built between brand owners and consumers, as Crazy Aaron, not so crazy Aaron, pretty wise and capable Aaron has demonstrated to us today. I think we need to take stronger steps to address the online sale of these goods before they reach consumers' hands. There's some studies that suggest as much as a quarter of all Americans who've purchased goods online have unknowingly purchased a counterfeit good. That's why I'm proud, along with my colleague Senator Tillis, to have introduced the Shop Safe Act. I was pleased to see a strong bipartisan vote over in the House Judiciary Committee to send Shop Safe to the floor. It will encourage electronic commerce providers to adopt anti-counterfeiting best practices in exchange for a safe harbor from contributory liability for trademark infringement. That bill will increase transparency, keep counterfeit goods with a health and safety impact out of consumer hands, and I think promote the health and safety of our country and continue to accelerate the growth of these innovative sales platforms. There's also an urgent need to provide transparency to consumers. That's why I'm also proud to support the Informed Consumers Act. As Mr. Dugan made clear, there's a great need for greater transparency. So I think Shop Safe and Inform complement each other to significantly increase transparency and accountability. And I urge my colleagues to support both of these important bills. Let me turn to some quick questions if I could. Mr. Muderich, my daughter's a satisfied customer, really loves putty and slime and so forth, and had commented on just how inventive your products are. But I'm struck by your descriptions about how hard it has been to enforce your trademark and how much time you've had to dedicate to it. Could you just briefly give us a little more detail? How many other competitors, how many other small business owners like you have had to dedicate enormous amount of resources to the whack-a-mole game of notice and takedown, notice and takedown, notice and takedown with online platforms?
So we go to trade shows, at least pre-pandemic, and so us owners sit around and we talk, and the toy industry in particular is a sort of started my life with something else, invented something, and landed here. And imitation is the finest form of flattery, and I think many of us are very, very flattered. I think if we have a successful product, you are going to see these outright knockoffs, counterfeiters, coming into the marketplace.
And you described how magnetic putty that has much lower safety standards poses a real threat to children and infants in particular. What would it mean to you and other small business owners if platforms took more proactive steps to combat counterfeit good sales?
Well, it would reduce, on the one side, the resources we need to spend sort of pounding against a wall trying to get someone to listen. It also, I think, would help our brand integrity. It would help consumer confidence, and we would probably receive more of the legitimate sales of the product than the sales which are going to illicit product.
Thank you. Mr. Dugan, how will the information that Inform would collect assist in combating the sale of the online sale of stolen goods?
Thank you for the question, Senator. I think it will do more to prevent these accounts from even being opened in the first place. You know, it will definitely protect the consumers from these sellers. It will aid law enforcement. It'll enable us to identify the bad actors much quicker, and will prevent the further expansion of the crime. I think right now what's vital right now is that we're in the middle of an epidemic, that we take immediate action to slow this down.
Thank you, Mr. Dugan. Mr. Snowden, some platforms have said they'd like to see affirmative requirements for brand owners in ShopSafe. Why isn't the current duty brand owners have to police their own trademarks, as Mr. Muderich has, enough to encourage them to assist platforms in policing counterfeit goods? And what requirements would platforms like to see of brand owners in the bill?
Well, I think one of the things you're doing in the bill is changing the liability. So a contributory liability is going to put the burden on us and not on them. They have no responsibility in this. It's important that they stay at the table as well. We cannot do this alone. It takes all of us. And we have been proactive for many years working on this particular issue. I mean, when I look at the retail side, eBay has a program for over 10 years working directly with retailers to help identify suspicious products. So this is something we want to do, but we need retailers, we need rights holders to make sure that they are still at the table and they have a responsibility to help us police their products as well.
Mr. Chairman, if I might have one final question. Professor Kamel, just help us understand how this balance works. If you would, describe the whack-a-mole problem experienced by brand owners. And I've heard some argue ShopSafe is a handout to big tech, that it immunizes them from liability they already have in exchange for nothing meaningful. Is that accurate, or is it true that online platforms are not frequently broadly liable for trademark infringement?
Sure. So to the first part of your question about the whack-a-mole approach, this is when, as has been described today, a counterfeit posting is up, a brand owner tries to react to it, and they spend hours searching for these counterfeit postings across multiple e-commerce platforms, and an entire sub-industry has actually sprung up to basically monitor these platforms to the best of their ability, verify with the brand owners, and then submit for notice and takedown. So hence the term whack-a-mole. Once you take down one, another 10 or 20 come up in its place. And the second part of your question, could you please repeat?
About contributory liability and whether this is just a handout to big tech, ShopSafe, that immunizes them from liability they already have in exchange for nothing meaningful. That's been one criticism after the House market.
Sure. So I don't believe that. I think it addresses what I've written about, which is law disruptive technology. So this technology has been wonderful for all of us. Everybody, I'm sure almost everybody in this room uses e-commerce, but there still has to be a balance to it. And we're sort of reaching that tipping point where we've seen all of these strict products liability cases being brought because people who are being injured cannot find the seller of the goods. So to flip that back to the secondary liability, it creates this space where e-commerce platforms do have to proactively do something to prevent the postings from ever coming up. Brand owners still need to be involved to help identify what their trademarks are, but we find a more balanced meeting between them.
Well, thank you. Thank you for your indulgence, Mr. Chairman. I look forward to working with all of you to reform this further. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Senator Coons. On the floor, we've started the first of three roll calls. I'm going to go make the first one, and Senator Blumenthal is